Okay, well, welcome everybody. We'll get the ball rolling. I'm going to be chairing the session today, and I'm joined by Alexandra and Lisa. You can see the images up there. So, what have we got today? Well, here are our three speakers. Lisa Wilding-Brown, CEO of NewMR, Alexandra Kuzmina, futurist and researcher from Nova at MMRR Research Worldwide, and myself. So, we're going to move to the third and final topic, and we're going to look at automating the analysis of data with AI. And I'm briefly going to look at non-ChatGPT options and ChatGPT options. We talk about generative AI, but nearly everything that is actively being used and doing good stuff has got some ChatGPT in it. If we're talking about conversational AI, of course, there are other tools, but it's kind of the driving force. So just thinking about the non-GPT things that have been going on for a while, we've been doing chatbots for a while, chatbots in the CX world, where you're providing a service to people and collecting research is quite an interesting way. It, of course, blurs all sorts of ethical lines, but is a very practical step. We've been using transcription and translation AI for ages. In fact, we've even forgotten that it's artificial intelligence. The sentiment analysis we've been using for the last few years, for the last 10 years, I guess, particularly with things like social media, has all been using AI. And lots of those wizards that are out there are also utilizing AI. So all of that has been allowing us to automate tasks, to allow us to do more, to allow us to de-skill. Quite often, one of the roles of automation is to allow you to de-skill a task so more people can do it and people can go from being employed to productive quicker. What about the surface level automation using GPT and similar things? We're seeing a lot of this. So summarizing text, translating text. So instead of using some of the tools we've used before, you download that, you put it up in chunks to your browser, having checked that you've got all the IP settings and the privacy settings right, and it's summarizing the text. We can use that for smart searching, asking it to write reports. So we give it some facts and say, could you summarize this for me? Creating personas to say, okay, here is the data, here are the reports. I want you to create a persona representing this segment. Now describe what the outputs would be. One of the interesting things I've seen people do here is a method of protecting anonymity. So instead of using actual quotes, which from an online community could be tracked back, you can say, here are 4 or 5 real quotes. Could you give me something in the style of these which conveys the same message? So little bits of automation, making some speed up, but not fundamental changes. The next level is where it becomes more integrated, and you will see growing number of references to co-pilots. That is where we put a smart tool alongside the basic product that's already been there. So UScan, for example, and Microsoft are both companies that have co-pilots in its use, and it makes you more efficient. So that sort of automation is doing more. You can also take the API interface and use R and Python and languages like that to create tools, or you can just call it from Google Scripts. So instead of loading your data into Excel, you're loading it into Google Sheets. It's slightly more convenient. I'll give you a quick example of what I mean. So here is a Google Sheet where I've downloaded some data. It's fictitious data. And one of the questions I would always ask at the end of my survey is, anything else you would like to say? And here I've got people who unfortunately have given away their PI. One of the jobs I always have to do, all of us have to do, is go through the open-end responses to make sure there's no personally identifiable data. So I put it into that cell there. This next cell, so if we take C2, it just rewords what the question was, what the answer was, and then the question I want to ask ChatGPT. The question I'm asking ChatGPT, does the answer contain personally identifiable information? Answer yes or no. And then in C2, that is what the code was. In D2, I've written a short routine in Google Apps script called GPT answer. So it simply asks that question and pastes the answer back. And the answer for the first one is yes, because there's an email address. The answer for the third one is yes, because there's a telephone number. So I can do that. Karine Pepper is, I think her surname, has done a lovely couple of presentations where she's used exactly this technique to say, is this real data? Or does it look like rubbish? Or does it look like fraudulent data? So we can do all sorts of automation of the data cleaning, the data organization with really very straightforward tools. And of course, the key thing, business process re-engineering, rethinking the process, not just smoothing the old ways. I'm going to be quite cheeky here. This is a product that I've developed along with a colleague. And what you can do is you can just load your raw data into it, and it will output a first analysis of that. It will give you a summary of what everything in that data might mean. And the thinking process then is you start with the end and you say, you probe it, you ask additional questions, you find things. So it's a rethinking of the way we're doing things. And I think this is going to be the big part of automation in the future. There will be a little bit of making each step that we currently do better, but there will be even more of just replacing it. Why should I ask ChatGPT to give me sentiment scores on every verbatim in the study, when instead I can ask the next level of generative AI to say, what does it mean? And what are the implications? And what is the main message in the data? So we need to think about the goals of automation. Sometimes we do it because we want to be faster. Sometimes we do it because we want to handle more stuff. Sometimes we want to be cheaper, and sometimes we want to be better. Usually you can't get all of them. You can sometimes. I wear glasses, and at one time in the past, every new lens in glass was hand machined to give you the right lenses. Now they are produced by computers and lathes and AI and tools, and they are faster. They can do more of them. They are cheaper, and they are better. Frankly, machines can shape glass into lenses better than people can holding them on a machine. And I've got this contrast between McDonald's and sushi. I love sushi, especially in Japan. I can believe that very soon we can have machines that will produce your Big Mac in there and serve it to you faster, more of them per hour. It will be cheaper, and it will be as good as the best person producing them. I do not believe that in 50 years from now, there will be a machine automation that will produce sushi as good as the best sushi person serving you over the counter in an authentic sushi bar in Tokyo. So not everything is going to do all of those, but that's okay. So that's my little pitch about automation. I'd love to see what Lisa and Alexandra think. And I know you, in the Innovate, you've got a lot of automation with AI already. Alexandra, you do a lot of experimenting in this zone.
Yeah, I'm all about automation. I think a lot of people are quite worried about generative AI and the impact that it's going to have on our space, but I don't feel that way. I want to live by our brand promise. I'm really excited about all the opportunity. And I think from an automation standpoint, one example I can give you that we've done, Ray, is several years ago, before kind of the Gen AI hype hit us last year, we were leveraging machine learning and AI to help evaluate open-end responses as a means to really fight the fraud that we were seeing in our testing. And so our tool, we have it, we have a more manual tool. People want to just upload a data file. And then we also have an API that can be integrated within the survey. So we call it text analyzer. It doesn't sort of summarize or code or do any sentiment analysis. It's really there to help proactively look at open ends in survey and before the survey and see a pre-screen or registration path. And it evaluates for things like open ends, open-end gibberish, duplication, speeding, AI-generated responses, and it measures for context. So what it does is it looks at good samples that have previously been procured, looking at high frequency adjectives, verbs, and nouns. and helps to inform, is this response contextual to the question itself? Because what we saw in our testing was there's this sort of notion of like word salad. So it might pass a general test. They're real words, they're spelled correctly, but when you actually correlate them to the question text, they have nothing to do with the topic. So using automation to help us scrutinize those open ends at scale is certainly the right way to go versus a manual review. So I think, the advantages of AI are going to help free up what was historically used as human time to free us up to really put our human side to work to make that impact and let the automated pieces handle the stuff that's maybe not as fun. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Lisa. And yeah, I'm really excited, and it does have a massive impact on just the day-to-day. But at the same time, I'm quite concerned because I've read somewhere that AI researchers trained an open large language model that is kind of behind all this automation, and looked at environmental impacts on what they've created, and found that just training the model used as much energy as heating up 30 homes for the whole year, and then emitted 25 tons of carbon dioxide, which is like driving your car 5 times around the planet. So somebody just can, use it to create a poem about sushi, for example. So picture this: we as researchers help clients to innovate and put new products to the market, but how much environmental impact does that product already have before it's even physically created, because of the AI that went to the early stage? And is that impact accounted for? So I suppose very soon the digital tools that we use would have an energy efficiency rating attached to that, to them, just like we have that rating on electronic devices or buildings, for example. So it's likely to be driven by legislation and hopefully by client demand. But could we as an industry offer carbon neutral research tools that will be a differentiator, maybe, in this kind of AI powered everything day and age? Or can we at least have tools that with known environmental impact, making it easy for clients to add research to their own environmental impacts on the products that they produce?
So NewMR have just recently adopted a European charter, an environmental charter, and it's pretty much copied off the one that the MRS has already adopted, because it was what they've done is fantastic. And so we picked up with that. And one of the requirements is for agencies to say what their carbon footprint is. Now, initially, that is going to be all about their buildings and their people flying, but it clearly should be including everything about the internet, not just artificial intelligence, but all of the other internet uses, which are really, really heavy. And if anybody is using blockchain, that is like really heavy too on that process. So I think that's a really good point you make, Alexandra, and it needs to happen. There's an interesting point here from Michelle about protecting the stuff from being available to the AI. There are two worries whenever we load something up to Google Translate or we load it up to ChatGPT. One, will it learn from our stuff? And two, will it share this stuff with other people? And it's relatively simple with ChatGPT 4 to set your settings so that no, it doesn't remember anything afterwards. It's even easier if you're using the API interface. In fact, the fact it doesn't remember even for a few seconds is kind of a nuisance there. But you can set that up. I'm not going to tell you how to do it because it changes every few weeks. So have a look, ask ChatGPT, then Google it, and it's pretty straightforward to set it up to say, no, you can't learn from my stuff. No, you can't store my stuff. And that is a really important thing to do. Additionally, I have got some clients who have in their contract with me said, you will not upload this stuff to ChatGPT. So even though it would be safe, I can't, because we have a contractual commitment. So you need to make sure that all your people know what they can and can't do in terms of this client's data or that client's data. And that's
yeah, and I would just add to that too, Ray. I think it's really important to have an internal policy, document this, and make sure you're training your teams, especially as your company grows. You want to make sure you have really good control on that front.
Absolutely. Any other questions out there relating to this automation process? I think coming back to something that Lisa said, you want to make sure as well that you automate things which first that people don't like doing. If you had a task that was really fun, meeting clients and talking to them, and you say, oh, yeah, we could do this with a bot. Yeah, that would not be so great. Let's really focus on the stuff where there are big savings. And then let's be aware of the consequences. So one of my favorite stories about automation is in glass blowing. Glass blowing was first automated about 1910 in New York. And it was disastrous for the artisans because they used to blow glass. And all of a sudden, this cheap standardized glass was available. What happened as a consequence was hundreds of people lost their job. Thousands of people gained a job working in the glass industry because all of a sudden, food and medicines were packed in glass bottles because it became affordable. Public health improved enormously because food was now hygienic and medicines were now hygienic. And eventually people got rich enough to start buying artisanal glass again. So yes, there is disturbances. Yes, there are losers. But when we do automation the right way, we should be looking for net gain out of that process. And anybody who sends me an email and I get one a week of do this and you can employ fewer people. Actually, they normally say you can employ less people, which also gets at my linguistic nose. Do this, you can employ fewer people. I don't open it. I'm not interested in employing fewer people. I'm interested in doing more stuff. Okay, question from Paul. Can you simply add anonymization? No, but you can. It's not super simple. Finding out that there is some in there is pretty straightforward. You can then ask it to extract it. You can then write a command to change it. I'm not sure that I would at the moment trust ChatGPT to give me a version of that verbatim with the personally identifiable information removed. It might work, but I'd want to try it with a lot of different cases first before I risked it. But it might well be as simple as asking that as a question. And as I say, you can just do that in Google Scripts. It's a great kit for just learning more about what it does and how to play with things. So unless there is anything else, I think we're all good. A big thank you to Lisa, Alexandra, and of course, all of you. Big thank you to all of our sponsors. Big thank you to anybody out there who's one of our patrons. You're much appreciated. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon.